Rain pounded against the window panes, each droplet creating a symphony of percussion that blended with the low, pulsing bass from inside. The crimson moon stood like a beacon in the darkness, its neon sign flickering occasionally, casting an ethereal red glow across the wet pavement. Inside, the air hung thick with perfume, sweat, and the unmistakable copper-sweet scent of blood, diluted, but present to those who knew how to detect it. Through the crowd of writhing bodies, the dim lighting cast long shadows that danced across the walls. Crystal glasses clinked at the bar, ice cubes melting slowly in amber liquids. The temperature dropped near the entrance each time the door swung open, a momentary chill that contrasted with the heat of so many bodies pressed together. In the darkest corner, a figure sat motionless. Tattered clothes hung from a once powerful frame, now deliberately hunched. Dirt smudged across high cheekbones that had once commanded respect from kings. Fingerless gloves concealed hands that had orchestrated the rise and fall of empires. The disguise was perfect. A beggar, a nobody, invisible to the self-important creatures who now occupied his domain. I watched them all through lowered lashes. My children, my descendants, my disappointments. 3 centuries of careful breeding and selection had led to this. A nightclub full of vampires who had forgotten what hunger truly meant. They fed on willing donors, signed contracts, followed rules set by mortals. The indignity of it burned in my empty stomach like acid. The thirst clawed at my throat. It had been 17 days since I'd last fed, long enough to weaken even one as old as I, long enough to make my disguise convincing. The scent of every pulse in the room tormented me, each heartbeat a drum calling me to feast. But I remained still, a spider waiting at the edge of its web. Vera wiped down the bar counter with practiced efficiency, her eyes occasionally darting to my corner. She sensed something, perhaps, but couldn't place it. Good. Her instincts remained sharp, even if her loyalty was yet untested. Silas stood by the door, his massive frame blocking most of the entrance. His eyes scanned the crowd methodically, pausing briefly on me before moving on. A flicker of something, concern perhaps, crossed his features before his professional mask returned. And then there was Boyd. My lips curled in disgust as I watched him strut across the floor, patting shoulders, whispering in ears, playing the benevolent lord of this small domain. My domain. The usurper wore my crown with such casual disregard, unaware of the test that awaited them all. The door opened again, bringing with it the scent of rain and something else, something pure and intoxicating that made my fangs ache against my gums. Raya had arrived. The rain had soaked through Ria's thin jacket by the time she hurried through the staff entrance. Droplets clung to her eyelashes and hair, catching the light like tiny diamonds. She shook herself slightly, reminding me of a small animal, vulnerable yet vibrant with life. "You're late!" Boyd's voice sliced through the background noise. He stood with his back against the bar, arms crossed over his expensive suit. Everything about him screamed new money, new power, the gold watch, the tailored cut, the shoes polished to a mirror shine. "I'm sorry," Ria said, hanging her wet jacket on a hook. "The bus broke down and I had to—" "I don't care," Boyd interrupted, his voice dropping to that dangerous purr that made the younger staff members tremble. "That's the 3rd time this month. 1 more and you're looking for another job. Understood?" I watched her pulse flutter at her throat, the quickening of her heartbeat visible even from my corner. Fear, anger, resignation, all flowing through her veins in a cocktail that smelled divine. Yes, Mr. Boyd, she whispered, her eyes downcast. Good girl, he said, reaching out to brush a wet strand of hair from her face. The gesture appeared tender, but I could see the possession in it, the casual cruelty of a man who believed everything and everyone belonged to him. Vera slid a tray of drinks toward Rhea. Table 7's waiting, she said quietly, her eyes communicating something more, sympathy, perhaps, or warning. Rhea nodded, straightened her spine, and lifted the heavy tray with practiced ease. She moved through the crowd like water, fluid and graceful, avoiding wandering hands and outstretched feet with the skill of someone who had learned the hard way to navigate dangerous spaces. As she passed near my table, I allowed myself to inhale deeply. Her scent cut through the artificial perfumes and colognes, clean rain, a hint of lavender soap, and beneath it all, the rich promise of blood that sang with vitality. Unlike the others here, she was fully human, a rarity in an establishment like this. Boyd watched her too, his eyes following her movements with the calculating assessment of a predator. But there was something else there. Something that made my fingers curl into fists beneath the table. Hunger, yes, but tainted with malice. I shifted slightly, allowing my coat to fall open just enough to reveal the filthy shirt beneath. The movement caught Boyd's attention, his nose wrinkling in disgust as his gaze fell upon me. Silas, he called, gesturing toward my corner. I thought I told you no vagrants. The bouncer hesitated, his massive frame tensing. He came in during the rush. Hasn't caused any trouble. That's not the point, Boyd hissed, straightening his cuffs. This isn't a homeless shelter. Get rid of him. Silas moved toward me with obvious reluctance, each step heavy with the weight of duty conflicting with compassion. I could smell his discomfort, see the way his eyes assessed me, looking for weapons, for trouble, for reasons to be gentle. Sir, he said quietly, reaching my table. I'm afraid I'll have to ask you to leave. I looked up at him, allowing just a flicker of my true self to show in my eyes. Ancient, powerful, dangerous. His pupils dilated in response, some deeply buried instinct recognizing the predator before him. Please, I whispered, my voice deliberately cracked and weak. Just a little longer. It's cold outside. Silas swallowed hard, confusion crossing his features. He sensed something but couldn't place it. The glamour I'd wrapped around myself was too strong, the disguise too perfect. I'm sorry, he said, genuine regret in his voice. Boss's orders. Behind him, Boyd approached, impatience radiating from him in waves. Problem, Silas? He asked, though it wasn't really a question. No, sir. Just explaining the situation. Boyd's lip curled as he looked down at me. There's nothing to explain. We have standards here. He turned to Silas. If you can't handle it, I'll do it myself. The first blow caught me in the shoulder, deliberately aimed to push rather than truly hurt. Boyd's hands were soft, uncalloused, the hands of someone who ordered others to do his dirty work. I allowed myself to be shoved from the chair, falling to the sticky floor with a convincing grunt of pain. Please, I said again, hating the word even as it left my lips. The humiliation burned worse than the thirst, but I needed to see this through. I needed to know who among my children would recognize their king, even in rags. Out, Boyd snarled, grabbing my collar and dragging me toward the door. The fabric ripped easily, exposing more of my deliberately filthy skin to the cold air. Around us, the music continued to play, but conversations quieted as heads turned to watch the spectacle. Some looked away in discomfort. Others watched with cruel amusement, and a precious few, showed concern in their eyes. Silas moved to intervene. "Boyd, man, it's pouring out there. Maybe you could remember who signs your paychecks," Boyd snapped, not releasing his grip on my clothing. "This place has a reputation. We cater to a specific clientele." The irony wasn't lost on me. This club had been mine for decades, a safe haven for our kind long before Boyd had even been turned. Now he spoke of reputation while dragging its true owner through spilled drinks and discarded napkins. My body screamed to respond, to rise up and tear out his throat, to reclaim what was mine with blood and terror. The beast within me rattled its cage, demanding retribution. But I held firm. This was a test, and violence now would defeat its purpose. As we neared the door, I caught sight of Rhea watching from beside the bar, her tray clutched tightly against her chest, knuckles white with tension. Her eyes met mine across the room, warm brown irises filled with a compassion that had become rare in this world of predators and prey. Boyd kicked the door open, the sound of rain immediately growing louder. He shoved me toward the threshold, where the downpour created a curtain between the warmth inside and the cold reality of the street. "Next time you want shelter, try the mission 3 blocks down," he said, his voice dripping with contempt. "This is a business, not a charity." I stumbled forward, deliberately catching my foot on the doorframe. The fall wasn't entirely feigned. 17 days without blood had weakened even my supernatural reflexes. My palms scraped against the wet pavement outside, small stones embedding themselves in my skin. "Wait!" A voice cut through the sound of rain and music, clear, determined, feminine. Rhea pushed past Boyd, her small frame somehow commanding in its righteous anger. "You can't just throw him out in this weather." Boyd's face darkened. "Get back to work, Rhea. This doesn't concern you." "It's inhumane," she insisted, stepping between us. The rain immediately began soaking her uniform, plastering her hair to her face. "He's not hurting anyone." I looked up at her from my position on the ground, allowing genuine surprise to show on my face. In 300 years, I had rarely witnessed such courage from a human facing down a vampire, even one as young and relatively weak as Boyd. "Final warning," Boyd growled, his eyes beginning to glow with that unnatural light that revealed his true nature. "Get back inside or join him in the gutter." Rhea didn't move. "Then fire me," she said simply. "I won't work for someone who treats people like this." The rain fell between them, creating a moment suspended in time. Behind Boyd, I could see others gathering in the doorway, Vera with her calculating gaze, Silas with his hands clenched into fists, various patrons with expressions ranging from boredom to fascination. Boyd grabbed Rhea's arm, his fingers digging into her flesh hard enough to bruise. "You stupid little..." I couldn't contain the growl that escaped my throat. Low, primal, unmistakably inhuman. Boyd's head snapped toward me, his eyes widening as he finally sensed something amiss about the beggar at his feet. Too late. Rhea took advantage of his distraction, twisting out of his grip with surprising strength. In the same fluid motion, she knelt beside me, shielding my body with her own. "I won't let you hurt him," she said, rain streaming down her face like tears. The scent of her blood, so close now, was overwhelming. Each pulse of her heart sent waves of that intoxicating aroma washing over me. My fangs extended fully, pressing painfully against my lower lip. I fought to control myself, to remember why I was here, what I was testing. Boyd laughed, the sound ugly and sharp. "You have no idea what you're defending, little girl." He kicked out suddenly, his expensive shoe connecting with my ribs with enough force to crack them had I been human. I doubled over, genuinely pained despite my supernatural resilience. The hunger made everything worse, every sensation magnified to torturous levels. Rhea gasped, her hand reaching out to steady me. Our skin connected, and the warmth of her nearly undid me. So long since I'd felt anything but cold. "He needs help," she said, looking up at Boyd with defiance burning in her eyes. "He needs blood." The words hung in the rain-soaked air between us. Boyd's expression shifted from anger to suspicion. "What did you say?" he demanded, leaning closer. Rhea's pulse quickened, but she didn't back down. "I know what you all are," she said quietly. "I've always known. And I know he's one of you. But starving." She turned to me then, her eyes searching my face with an intensity that stripped away pretense. Without hesitation, she pushed her wet hair aside, exposing the smooth column of her neck. "Take what you need," she whispered. The words meant only for me despite the audience. "I offer freely." Time seemed to stop. The rain fell in slow motion, each droplet catching the red glow from the neon sign. Boyd's face contorted in slow-building rage. Behind him, Silas took a step forward, recognition finally dawning in his eyes. My disguise was crumbling, the glamour dissolving under the weight of hunger and the unexpected gift being offered. My true self began to emerge, back straightening, eyes clearing to their natural silver, the aura of power no longer suppressed. Rhea's eyes widened as she sensed the change, but she didn't withdraw her offer. If anything, she leaned closer, her pulse a siren song I could no longer resist. My fangs pierced her skin with surgical precision, finding the vein without causing unnecessary pain. The first drop of blood touched my tongue, and the world exploded into sensation. Colors intensified, sounds clarified, every nerve ending ignited with pleasure so acute it bordered on pain. Her blood tasted of loyalty, courage, compassion, qualities I had feared extinct in this modern world. As it flowed into me, I felt strength returning, power surging through limbs too long denied nourishment. With each swallow, the bond between us strengthened, her life force intertwining with my ancient existence. Around us, recognition rippled through the gathering crowd. Whispers of "it can't be" and "the king" reached my ears even through the haze of feeding. Boyd's face drained of color as the truth dawned on him. "Dante," he whispered, the name falling from his lips like a death sentence. I raised my eyes to his, still drinking from Rhea's willing vein, her hands now clutching my shoulders, not in resistance but in support. The connection between us hummed with energy, her consciousness brushing against mine as the blood bond began to form. In her mind, I saw recognition not of my title or power, but of my essential self, the loneliness, the burden of centuries, the test I had set for my children. She understood without words, accepted without question. As Boyd backed away in growing terror, as the others fell to their knees in belated recognition, as the rain continued to fall around us, washing away the filth of my disguise, I felt something I had not experienced in centuries. I felt seen. I gently withdrew from Rhea's wrist, my tongue sealing the wound with ancient precision. The taste of her lingered, a symphony of flavors no mortal cuisine could match. Her blood sang of summer afternoons and quiet determination, of kindness shown to strangers and fierce protection of what she loved. "My king," Silas whispered, dropping to one knee beside us, his massive frame somehow diminished in reverence. The rain plastered his shirt to broad shoulders as he bowed his head. Around us, the crowd parted like a dark sea. Some knelt in the wet pavement. Others backed away in terror. Boyd had disappeared entirely, fleeing into the depths of what had once been my sanctuary. Rhea swayed slightly against me, her heartbeat fluttering like a captured bird. I steadied her with hands that no longer trembled, strength flowing back into my limbs with every passing second. "You need to sit down," I murmured, supporting her weight. Her eyes, slightly unfocused, found mine. "Worth it," she whispered. "I knew it was you. Somehow, I always knew." The connection between us pulsed, new and fragile yet unbreakable. Through it, I sensed her dizziness, the pleasant weakness in her limbs, and something else. Pride. Pride in having recognized what others had missed, in having been brave enough to act when others cowered. "Silas," I commanded, my voice stronger now. "Take her inside. Find somewhere quiet." He rose immediately, reaching for Rhea, but she shook her head. "I can walk," she insisted, straightening her shoulders despite the pallor of her skin. "And you need to come inside too, out of this rain." I glanced toward the club's entrance, where curious faces peered out at the commotion. My kingdom, or what remained of it. For 3 centuries I had ruled the night in this city, establishing order among the chaotic hunger of my kind. Then I had chosen to test them, to disappear and watch from the shadows, to see who would remain loyal to my laws in my absence. The results had been disappointing. "Not yet," I said, tasting the night air. "Boyd has friends, eyes. I need to observe before I reclaim what's mine." Rhea's hand found mine, her fingers cool against my newly warmed skin. "Then I'm coming with you." "You've given enough tonight," I countered, feeling the slight tremor in her grip. She looked up at me, raindrops clinging to her lashes like diamonds. "I've waited 5 years to find you. I'm not letting you disappear again." The crowd was dispersing now, whispers spreading through the night like wildfire. Boyd would know within minutes that his reign was threatened. I needed to move quickly, to understand exactly how deep the corruption had spread before I revealed myself fully. "Silas," I said, "tell no one else what you've seen. For now, return to your post. Act normally. I'll find you when the time is right." The bouncer nodded, conflict evident in his eyes, torn between following my direct order and his instinct to protect me. "As you wish, my king, but be careful. Things have changed." "How much?" I asked. His expression darkened. "Too much." After Silas reluctantly returned to the club's entrance, I guided Rhea toward the shadows of a nearby alley. My newly awakened senses cataloged everything: the distant thunder rolling across the city, the scent of rain-soaked concrete, the quickened heartbeats of those who had witnessed my partial revelation. And most of all, Rhea's blood still singing in my veins, calling me to take more. I pushed that hunger down. The first taste after so long had awakened appetites I had spent centuries mastering. Control had always been my strength, the quality that elevated me above the savage hunger of lesser vampires. I would not surrender it now. "You're fighting it," Rhea observed, watching my face with unexpected perception. "Fighting what?" "The hunger." She touched my cheek, her fingertips tracing the line of my jaw. "I can feel it, you know, through whatever this is between us now. The blood bond, so rare between our kinds, yet unmistakable." Her willing gift had created a connection deeper than mere feeding. I hadn't experienced such a bond in over a century, had forgotten its double-edged intimacy. "You shouldn't be able to sense that," I said, studying her face. The bond is too new. She shrugged, rainwater dripping from her hair. Maybe I'm special. A smile tugged at my lips despite the gravity of our situation. Maybe you are. We moved deeper into the alley, away from curious eyes. The neon lights from the main street cast strange, shifting patterns across the brick walls. Somewhere nearby, a cat yowled and scurried away, sensing the predator in its midst. We need a plan, I said, scanning the rooftops for watching eyes. And you need rest. That wasn't a small amount of blood you gave. I'm fine, she insisted, though the bond told me otherwise. Her limbs felt heavy, her thoughts slightly fuzzy around the edges. Stubborn, I observed. Look who's talking. The king who decided to become a beggar instead of, I don't know, just firing the bad manager? I couldn't help but laugh, the sound rusty from disuse. It's not quite that simple. Then explain it to me. She leaned against the alley wall, arms crossed. Because from where I'm standing, you let Boyd turn your kingdom into a blood trafficking operation while you sat outside begging for scraps. Her directness was refreshing after centuries of courtiers and sycophants. I needed to know who would stay true to my laws without my presence to enforce them. Who would protect humans rather than exploit them? Who would remember that we survive because of restraint, not in spite of it? And instead you found Boyd selling vampire VIP packages to rich humans and bleeding the poor ones dry. In the back rooms? I stared at her. How do you know that? Her expression darkened. Because my sister was one of them. Came in for a job interview 3 months ago. Never came home. She swallowed hard. I've been working here since, trying to find proof, trying to find her. The weight of my failure settled on my shoulders like a stone cloak. While I tested my subjects, innocent humans had suffered. I didn't know, I said quietly. No, you were too busy proving a point. There was no accusation in her voice, only a deep sadness that echoed through our bond. Before I could respond, footsteps approached the mouth of the alley. I pulled Rhea deeper into the shadows, my body instinctively positioning itself between her and potential threat. They're saying the king has returned, a male voice hissed. Boyd wants everyone looking. The beggar, it was him all along. Bullshit, another voice responded. The king's dead. Boyd's just paranoid. Tell that to Silas. He saw it happen. Silas has always been loyal to the old ways. He sees what he wants to see. The footsteps moved on, but the danger remained. Boyd was mobilizing, faster than I'd anticipated. We needed somewhere safe, somewhere I could recover fully before confronting him. My apartment, Rhea whispered. It's not far, 3 blocks. I hesitated. They'll look for you there. Not right away. To them, I'm just a human waitress who got caught up in something. They'll search the area around the club first. She tugged my sleeve. Come on. You need to get off the street. And I need to change out of these wet clothes before I catch pneumonia. The practicality of her argument won out. Moving through back alleys and staying in the shadows, we made our way through the rain-slick streets. I felt eyes on us occasionally, not necessarily hostile, but watching. News was spreading through the supernatural community. The king had returned. The balance of power was shifting. Rhea's apartment building was old but well-maintained, a 6-story brick structure with fire escapes zigzagging up its face. She led me through a side entrance, up 3 flights of stairs, and down a narrow hallway to a door marked 3E. Inside, the space was small but distinctly hers. Bookshelves overflowing with paperbacks, a collection of mismatched coffee mugs hanging from hooks in the tiny kitchen. A comfortable-looking couch draped with a handmade quilt. Photos clustered on one wall. Ria with an older woman who shared her smile. Ria with a younger woman who shared her eyes. "Your sister?" I asked, nodding toward the latter. "Mia." Her voice caught slightly. "She's 22. Is." She shook her head. "I don't know anymore." I moved to the window, peering out at the rain-washed street below. No signs of pursuit yet, but it wouldn't take long for Boyd's people to start a systematic search. "I need to go back," I said. "Tonight. Now that I have some strength back, I need to see exactly what Boyd has done to my kingdom." Ria disappeared into what I presumed was her bedroom, returning moments later with a towel which she tossed to me. "Dry off first, and you need more blood before you go anywhere." I caught the towel, but shook my head at her latter statement. "You can't give more tonight. It's not safe." Wasn't offering mine. She walked to her refrigerator and opened it, revealing several plastic containers filled with dark red liquid. "I've been collecting evidence, blood packets Boyd's people were disposing of. I was going to take them to the police, but..." She gestured vaguely. "How exactly do you explain vampire blood trafficking to human cops?" I approached slowly, examining the containers. "How did you know to preserve it properly?" "Google, mostly. And I dated a phlebotomist in college." She shrugged. "It's not fresh, but it's only a few days old." I picked up one of the containers, feeling the weight of it in my hand. Not ideal, but it would help. "You're either the bravest human I've ever met, or the most foolhardy." "Probably both." She pushed her wet hair back from her face. "I'm going to change. There's more towels in the bathroom if you want to clean up." While Ria changed, I consumed 2 of the blood packets. Cold, slightly stale, but nourishing nonetheless. With each swallow, my strength returned further, my senses sharpening beyond even their usual acuity. I could hear the neighbors 3 doors down arguing about bills, could smell the history of meals cooked in this kitchen over the past week, could feel the vibrations of the city through the floorboards. When Ria emerged in dry clothes, simple black pants and a dark blue sweater, I was standing by her bookshelf, examining a worn copy of Dracula. "Getting research tips?" she asked, a smile playing at her lips. "Stoker got almost everything wrong," I replied, deliberately at my request. Her eyebrows shot up. "You knew Bram Stoker?" "I've known many writers over the centuries, some more accurate than others." I returned the book to its shelf. "Are you certain you want to be involved in this? Once we return to the club, you'll be in danger." "I've been in danger since the day I started working there." She pulled her damp hair back into a ponytail with practiced efficiency. "At least now I have the actual vampire king on my side." The way she said it, not with awe or fear, but with something approaching fond exasperation, warmed something long cold within me. "We'll need to disguise you," she continued, eyeing me critically. "Boyd's people will be looking for the beggar, but they might not recognize you if you look, well, less like you've been living on the street." She disappeared again, returning with a black button-down shirt and dark jeans. "My ex left these. They might fit you." The clothes were slightly too large, but far better than my rain-soaked rags. After changing and washing away the worst of the grime that had become my second skin, I examined myself in her bathroom mirror. The face that looked back was still mine, angular, pale, with eyes that had seen centuries pass, but transformed. No longer the humble beggar, not quite the king restored. A transitional state, appropriate for the night's work. When I emerged, Ria was waiting by the door, a small backpack slung over her shoulder. "What's in the bag?" I asked. "First aid kit, pepper spray, phone charger, protein bars?" She shrugged at my raised eyebrow. "I like to be prepared. We're confronting vampires, not going hiking." "Same difference. Both might kill you if you're not careful." She checked her watch. "It's almost midnight. The club will be at its busiest. Perfect for our purposes." In crowds, we could observe without being immediately noticed. I nodded, and we slipped out of her apartment, back into the night that had been my domain for centuries. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets glistening under streetlights. We approached Crimson from the rear, avoiding the main entrance where Silas stood guard. A service alley led to a back door. Employee access, according to Ria. "They don't lock it during business hours," she whispered. "Too many smoke breaks." Sure enough, the door opened with a gentle tug. Inside, the thudding bass of electronic music vibrated through the walls. We entered a narrow corridor lined with storage rooms and offices. At the far end, a curtained doorway led to the main club. Ria touched my arm. "Boyd's office is the second door on the right. He keeps it locked, but—" I moved to the door she indicated, placing my hand against its surface. With my restored strength, I could easily break it down, but subtlety was required. I closed my eyes, focusing on the lock mechanism. "What are you doing?" Ria whispered. "Something old," I murmured, feeling the tumblers respond to my will. There was a soft click, and the door swung inward. We vampires didn't survive millennia by lacking useful skills. Boyd's office was meticulously organized, files in labeled folders, computer screen dark but ready. A leather appointment book centered precisely on the blotter. I moved to the desk while Ria kept watch at the door. The appointment book revealed coded entries, initials, numbers, cryptic symbols. I recognized the pattern quickly enough. Names of clients, amounts of blood, prices paid. Boyd had systematized the exploitation of humans, turning what had once been a sanctuary into a slaughterhouse. "He keeps digital records too," Ria whispered. "Password protected." I turned to the computer, waking it with a touch. The password prompt glowed in the dimness. "Any ideas?" I asked. Ria slipped into the room, gently closing the door behind her. "Try King is dead. No spaces." The password worked. Files opened before us. Spreadsheets, customer lists, inventory of merchandise. "How did you know?" I asked, scanning the damning evidence. "I've heard him say it, like a mantra." She leaned over my shoulder, pointing to a folder labeled Special Inventory. "That one." Inside were photos, dozens of them. Young men and women, names, blood types, physical characteristics. Some had red X's through their images. "The ones he's used up," Ria whispered, voice tight. She touched one photo, the young woman from her apartment wall. Mia. No X marked her image. She's still alive. I felt her hope surge through our bond, bright and painful in its intensity. Before I could respond, voices approached in the corridor outside. I quickly closed the files, returning the computer to sleep mode, and pulled Ria behind the office door just as it opened. Boyd entered, accompanied by a vampire I didn't recognize. Younger, nervous, with the too bright eyes of one who fed too often and too deeply. "Can't just be rumors," the younger vampire was saying. "Silas wouldn't make this up." "Silas is a relic," Boyd snapped, moving to his desk. "Loyal to a king who abandoned his people. If Dante has returned, why hasn't he come to claim his throne? Why skulk in shadows?" To observe, the other suggested. To judge. Boyd laughed, the sound brittle with false confidence. There's nothing to judge. I've made this operation more profitable than he ever did with his restraint and moderation. The humans are livestock, nothing more. I felt Rhea tense beside me, her anger pulsing through our bond. I placed a steadying hand on her arm. The old laws protected us, the younger vampire persisted, kept us hidden, safe. The old laws kept us weak. Boyd unlocked a drawer, removing a vial of dark red liquid. This is the future. Controlled feeding, premium blood, humans who serve their purpose and are disposed of properly. He unstoppered the vial, and even from our hiding place, I could smell the potency of the blood. Young, healthy, infused with fear and pain. The kind of blood that creates addiction, that drives vampires to madness over time. Special reserve, Boyd said, offering it to his companion. From the new girl, the one who looks like our waitress. Mia's blood. I felt Rhea's horror and rage explode through our bond, nearly overwhelming my own control. Before I could stop her, she had stepped from behind the door. "Where is she?" Rhea demanded, voice shaking with fury. Boyd spun around, the vial dropping from his fingers to shatter on the floor. Blood splattered across polished shoes and expensive carpet. "You!" he hissed. Then his eyes widened as I emerged behind her. Recognition dawned in his expression, followed quickly by calculation. My king. What an unexpected honor. "Where's my sister?" Rhea repeated, stepping forward despite the danger. Boyd's companion backed toward the door, but I moved faster than human eyes could track, blocking his exit. "No one is leaving," I said quietly. Boyd's face twisted into a smile that never reached his eyes. "Of course not. We have so much to discuss." He glanced at Rhea. "Your pet human seems distressed. Perhaps she should wait outside while we talk business." "She stays," I said, "and you will answer her question." "The sister." Boyd shrugged elaborately. "One of many in our inventory. Special blood type. Excellent yield. Currently in our premium stockroom." "Take us to her," I commanded, allowing my voice to carry the weight of centuries of authority. Boyd hesitated, measuring his options. I could see him calculating chances of resistance, of escape, finding none. "As you wish," he finally said. "Though I think you'll find our operation quite impressive. Very efficient." He led us from the office, down the corridor to a door marked "Private." A keypad secured it, which he unlocked with practiced movements. Beyond lay another hallway, this one clinically white and sterile, with doors spaced evenly along both sides. Each bore only a number. The music from the club was muffled here, replaced by an eerie silence broken only by the occasional moan or whisper from behind the doors. "Our premium collection," Boyd explained, as if conducting a tour of a wine cellar. Each donor carefully selected, maintained in optimal condition. "You mean imprisoned," Rhea growled. Boyd ignored her, stopping before a door marked 12. He swiped a key card, and the door slid open. Inside, on a narrow bed, lay a young woman who could only be Rhea's sister. Thinner than in her photo, paler with puncture marks visible on her neck and wrists, but alive. Her eyes fluttered open at the sound of the door, widening when she saw Rhea. "Mia," Rhea breathed, rushing to her sister's side. Boyd watched with clinical detachment. "As you can see, she's quite well cared for. Regular meals, medical supervision. The merchandise must be maintained." I felt something ancient and terrible rising within me, a rage I had not permitted myself to feel in centuries. The room seemed to darken around the edges of my vision, the air growing heavy with the weight of my anger. "How many?" I asked, my voice barely recognizable even to myself. "Rooms? 20 on this level, another 30 in the sub-level." Boyd gestured expansively. "We've expanded operations considerably in your absence." "How many have died?" Boyd shrugged. "Some inventory is inevitably lost. The weak ones, mostly. It's natural selection at its finest." Behind me, Rhea was helping Mia to sit up, murmuring reassurances, checking her wounds. Their reunion should have been private, sacred. Instead, it was occurring in this sterile prison, under the smug gaze of their captor. "You've broken every law I established," I said quietly. "Every principle that has kept our kind safe and hidden for millennia." "I've evolved beyond outdated constraints," Boyd countered. "The old ways were holding us back. Humans are plentiful, replaceable. Why practice restraint when abundance surrounds us?" I moved, closer to him, watching him struggle not to step back. "Because restraint is what separates us from animals. Because without it, we become the monsters humans believe us to be." "Poetic," he sneered, "but impractical. Your time has passed, Dante. The kingdom has moved on. Even if you reveal yourself now, how many of our kind do you think will choose your path of moderation over the freedom I've given them?" He was baiting me, trying to provoke a reaction that would justify resistance. And it was working. The rage continued building, a pressure behind my eyes, a trembling in my hands. "Dante," Rhea called softly from behind me. "We need to get her out of here." I turned to see Mia leaning heavily against her sister, barely able to stand. The girl's eyes met mine, and I saw in them a silent plea, not just for herself, but for the others trapped in this place. "Yes," I agreed. "We do." Boyd moved with unexpected speed, pressing a button on the wall. Immediately, an alarm began to sound throughout the facility. "I think not," he said, baring his fangs. "You may have been king once, but this is my domain now, and you've just trespassed on private property." I heard doors opening in the hallway, footsteps approaching rapidly. Boyd's security force, no doubt. Vampires loyal to him and his profitable enterprise. "Get behind me," I told Rhea and Mia, positioning myself between them and the door. Boyd smiled, confidence returning as his reinforcements approached. "You're outnumbered, old man. Even with your strength returned, you can't fight us all." He was right. Even at full power, I couldn't battle an entire cadre of vampires while protecting 2 vulnerable humans. But there were other kinds of power besides physical strength. "I don't need to fight you all," I said, drawing myself up to my full height. The air around me seemed to shimmer as I released the careful control I had maintained for centuries. Power radiated outward, ancient, primal, undeniable. The first of Boyd's security team appeared in the doorway, then froze, eyes widening in recognition and instinctive fear. "The king," one whispered, dropping immediately to one knee. "Get up, you fool," Boyd hissed. "He has no power here." But another guard knelt, then another, primal recognition overriding Boyd's influence. The bond between maker and maid, between king and subject, ran deeper than temporary allegiance. Boyd's face contorted with rage. "Kill him! Kill them all!" One guard, newer or more loyal to Boyd than the others, lunged forward. I met him with a single blow that sent him crashing into the wall, plaster cracking around the impact. "Anyone else?" I asked quietly. The remaining guards lowered their eyes, submitting to the authority they recognized on an instinctual level. Boyd, seeing his support crumbling, backed toward the door. "This isn't over," he snarled, The old ways are dead, Dante. You can't bring them back. Watch me, replied. With a final look of hatred, Boyd turned to flee and found Silas filling the doorway, massive arms crossed over his chest. Going somewhere, boss? The bouncer asked, his tone almost conversational. Boyd tried to push past him, but Silas caught him by the throat, lifting him off the ground with one hand. The king has returned, Silas said simply, and I believe he has some questions for you. I moved to stand before Boyd, who dangled in Silas's grip like a disobedient puppy. Yes, I agreed, starting with what exactly you've done to my kingdom in my absence. Fear replaced the arrogance in Boyd's eyes as the full reality of his situation became clear. He had gambled everything on my permanent absence, on the belief that the old order had died. Now he faced the consequences of that miscalculation. Mercy, he gasped around Silas's grip. I was only trying to... To what? I interrupted. To enslave humans? To addict our kind to blood tainted with fear and pain? To destroy the balance I spent centuries creating? Behind me, I heard Mia whisper something to Rhea. Heard the sisters embracing. Their reunion should have been my focus. The rescue of innocence, the dismantling of Boyd's operation. But the rage continued building, a red haze descending over my vision. 3 centuries of restraint, of careful control, of setting an example for my kind. And this was how Boyd had repaid that legacy. With exploitation, with cruelty, with a return to the very barbarism I had fought to overcome. Please, Boyd wheezed, I can change things back. You can do nothing, I said, my voice dropping to a whisper that somehow filled the room. You have violated every law I established. You have endangered our kind with your greed. You have tortured innocence for profit. The rage was a living thing now, pulsing behind my eyes, coursing through my veins. I felt my features changing, shifting into something older, something primal that I had not allowed to surface in centuries. Dante, Rhea's voice called from behind me, concern evident in her tone. Through our bond, I felt her fear, not of me, but for me, for what I might become in my anger. Boyd must have seen that ancient thing rising in my eyes, for he began to struggle in earnest against Silas's grip, feet kicking uselessly in the air. You can't, he gasped. The king is just. The king is merciful. That's what you taught us. I taught many things, I replied, moving closer until my face was inches from his, including the price of betrayal. I felt my control slipping, the carefully constructed walls of civilization crumbling beneath the weight of my rage. Boyd had not simply broken rules. He had perverted everything I stood for, had turned my absence into an opportunity for the worst kind of exploitation. And now, as his fierce scent filled the sterile air, as his eyes widened in recognition of what was coming, I felt the last threads of my restraint begin to snap. The last threads of my restraint snapped with an almost audible sound. In that moment, I was no longer Dante the beggar, nor even Dante the king. I was something far older, the primal force that had stalked the shadows since before mankind built its first cities. The king is merciful, I echoed, my voice a guttural rumble that barely resembled human speech. But I am not feeling particularly kingly tonight. My hand shot forward, fingers elongating into talon-like appendages that wrapped around Boyd's throat, replacing Silas's grip. The bouncer stepped back, his eyes wide with a mixture of awe and fear as he watched what was unfolding. You think you know what I am? I whispered, pulling Boyd's face closer to mine. You have seen only the mask I choose to wear. Boyd's eyes bulged as my grip tightened. I could feel his pulse fluttering beneath my fingers like a trapped bird, could smell the acrid tang of his terror cutting through the sterile air of his office. Dante. Ria's voice again, closer now. Her hand touched my shoulder, light as a feather but heavy with meaning. Through our nascent bond, I felt her concern washing over me. Not judgment, but a gentle reminder of who I had chosen to be. I loosened my grip slightly, allowing Boyd to draw a ragged breath. You will face judgment, I said, my voice steadying. But not like this. Not as a beast, as a king. The ancient fury still boiled within me, but Ria's presence acted as an anchor, tethering me to the civilization I had spent centuries cultivating. I would not throw away those centuries of progress for the momentary satisfaction of tearing out Boyd's throat, tempting though it was. Silas, I commanded, gather the staff, all of them, and the patrons. Everyone in this establishment will bear witness tonight. The bouncer nodded, a newfound respect evident in his eyes as he backed toward the door. What are you going to do? Boyd wheezed as I dragged him upright. What kings have always done, I replied, my voice cold. Make an example. The main floor of Crimson had been transformed. The pulsing music had been silenced, the flashing lights replaced with a steady, blood-red glow that bathed the entire space. The patrons, both human and vampire, had been herded to the edges of the room, forming a circle around the central dance floor where I now stood with Boyd kneeling before me. Ria stood at my right hand, her face solemn but unafraid. Silas took position at my left, his massive frame a silent statement of support. Vera watched from behind the bar, her usual mask of indifference replaced with naked curiosity. For those who do not know me, I began, my voice carrying effortlessly to every corner of the suddenly silent club. I am Dante. A murmur rippled through the crowd. The name meant nothing to most of the humans present, but among the vampires I could see recognition dawning, followed swiftly by disbelief, then fear. Some of you knew me as the beggar who haunted your doorstep, I continued, allowing my appearance to shift subtly, my back straightening, the illusion of age falling away like a discarded cloak. Others know me by a different title. It can't be, someone whispered from the crowd. The king? The very same, I confirmed, feeling the weight of centuries settling back onto my shoulders. I have walked among you, watched you, judged you, and found many of you wanting. Boyd trembled at my feet, his expensive suit now rumpled and stained with his own sweat. The scent of his fear permeated the air, drawing instinctive reactions from the vampires present. Dilating pupils, flaring nostrils, the subtle extension of fangs. This man, I said, placing a hand on Boyd's shoulder that made him flinch, took what was meant to be a sanctuary and perverted it into a place of exploitation and cruelty. He violated the laws I established to protect both our kind and the humans we depend upon. I turned my gaze to the crowd, meeting the eyes of each vampire present. Laws that exist not merely for our convenience, but for our survival. Laws that have kept us hidden, kept us safe, for centuries. Please, Boyd whispered, barely audible even to my enhanced hearing. I didn't know. I didn't know you were watching. That, I said, loud enough for all to hear, is precisely the problem. You should have acted as if I were always watching, as if judgment were always imminent, because it was. I moved to stand directly in front of Boyd, blocking him from the view of most of the crowd. You have a choice now, I told him quietly. Face my judgment, or face the sun. His eyes widened at the implication. The sun would mean final death, painful, irreversible. My judgment might at least leave him existing in some form. Your judgment, he whispered, defeat evident in every line of his body. I nodded once, then turned back to address the room. Boyd has chosen to submit to the king's justice, I announced. Let all bear witness. With a movement too swift for human eyes to follow, I seized Boyd by his expensive lapels and lifted him from the floor. His feet dangled helplessly as I raised him high enough that every person in the club could see him clearly. I sentence you to thirst, I proclaimed, my voice resonating with power that had nothing to do with volume. 3 decades without a drop of blood shall pass your lips. You will hunger. You will weaken. You will remember, with every moment of your existence, the suffering you inflicted on others for profit. Horror dawned in Boyd's eyes as the sentence registered. Thirst was considered by many to be worse than death, a living starvation that would leave him conscious but eternally unfulfilled, his body withering to a husk, while his mind remained painfully alert. No, he gasped. Please, no. The sentence is passed, I interrupted, then looked to Silas. Take him to the vault. The keepers will ensure the sentence is carried out. Silas nodded grimly, stepping forward to take custody of the trembling manager. As he did, I noticed movement at the edge of the crowd, several vampires attempting to slip away unnoticed. Stop, I commanded, and the word froze them in place as surely as if I had encased them in ice. Those who profited from Boyd's enterprise will also face judgment. Step forward now, and your sentence may be lightened. Attempt to flee, and I will hunt each of you to the ends of the earth. Slowly, reluctantly, a handful of vampires separated themselves from the crowd, their expressions ranging from defiance to abject terror. I nodded to Vera, who had emerged from behind the bar. Record their names, I instructed her. They will be dealt with individually. As Silas dragged the still protesting Boyd toward the exit, I turned my attention to the humans present. Many stood wide-eyed, clearly struggling to process what they were witnessing. Some, I noted, showed signs of having been fed upon too frequently, their complexions pallid, their movements sluggish. To our human guests, I said, my tone softening slightly. I offer both apology and assurance. What has happened here was never meant to be. Crimson will be restored to its original purpose, a place of mutual benefit, not exploitation. I gestured to Rhea, who stepped forward to stand beside me. This woman, I continued, demonstrated courage and compassion when she had every reason to show neither. She will oversee the transition, ensuring that all who come here are treated with dignity and respect. Surprise flickered across Rhea's face, but she quickly composed herself, nodding in acceptance of the responsibility. Through our bond, I felt her determination mingling with uncertainty, and beneath it all, a current of something deeper, something that had been growing between us since that first night she had offered me her wrist. The rules are simple. I addressed the crowd once more. Consent is inviolable. Moderation is mandatory. Exploitation will be punished. These principles have governed our kind for centuries, and they will continue to do so under my renewed watch. I let my gaze sweep the room one final time, noting the mixture of fear, respect, and, from some of the older vampires, relief that flickered across the assembled faces. Crimson will close tonight, I announced. It will reopen when appropriate changes have been implemented. Until then, remember what you have witnessed. Remember that the shadows are watching. Remember that the king has returned. With those words, I extended my hand to Rhea. After only a moment's hesitation, she took it, her fingers warm against my perpetually cool skin. "Come," I said softly. "We have much to discuss." Dawn was approaching by the time we reached my true residence. Not the alley where I had posed as a beggar, but a penthouse overlooking the city. Its windows treated to filter the harmful rays of the sun while still allowing me to observe the world below. Rhea stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows, gazing out at the city as it transitioned from night to day, the first hints of pink and gold touching the eastern horizon. The events at Crimson seemed to have left her thoughtful rather than frightened, a reaction that only confirmed what I had sensed in her from the beginning. "So," she said finally, turning to face me. The king of vampires was watching me serve drinks all this time. A smile tugged at the corner of my mouth. Not all this time, only the past few months. "Why?" she asked, direct as always. "Why the disguise? Why Crimson? Why me?" I moved to stand beside her at the window, close enough to feel the warmth radiating from her body, but not so close as to invade her space. "I have ruled for centuries," I explained, "but power changes perspective. I found myself surrounded by sycophants, by those who would tell me only what they thought I wished to hear. I needed to see my kingdom as it truly was, not as my courtiers painted it." "So you became a beggar," she said, understanding dawning in her eyes. "The most invisible of men," I confirmed. "I watched, I listened. I saw how my people behaved when they thought no one of consequence was looking. And I saw how humans treated those they considered beneath them." "And what did you learn?" she asked, her gaze steady on mine. "That power corrupts, as humans have always known. That in my absence those I trusted perverted the systems I created. And—" I paused, choosing my words carefully. "That compassion can exist in the most unexpected places." Her cheeks colored slightly at that, but she didn't look away. "I just did what anyone would do." "No," I said firmly. "You did what few would do. You showed kindness without expectation of reward. You offered sustenance to a creature you had every reason to fear." "I wasn't afraid of you," she said, though we both knew it wasn't entirely true. "You were," I corrected gently. "But you acted despite your fear. That is the definition of courage." She fell silent for a moment, processing this. When she spoke again, her voice was quieter. "What happens now? To Crimson? To the others? To me?" The question hung in the air between us, heavy with implication. I had given her a position of authority at Crimson, but we both knew that wasn't what she was really asking. "Crimson will be restored to what it was meant to be," I said. "A place of equitable exchange, where vampires can feed without causing harm, and humans can receive fair compensation for their contribution." I turned fully to face her now. "As for you, Rhea, that depends entirely on what you want." "What I want?" she repeated, a hint of incredulity in her tone. "Does that matter to someone like you?" "It matters more than anything," I replied, allowing the full weight of my sincerity to color my words. I have lived long enough to know that power taken is never as valuable as that which is freely given. Understanding dawned in her eyes as she realized what I was offering. Not just a position, not just protection, but a choice. Her choice. "The bond between us," she said slowly. I felt it growing stronger. "Is that normal?" "No," I admitted. "It is rare, precious. It suggests a compatibility that transcends the physical, a resonance of spirit that even I don't fully understand, despite my years." And if I wanted to explore that bond? She asked, her heartbeat accelerating in a way that had nothing to do with fear. If I wanted to see where it might lead? I reached out slowly, giving her every opportunity to pull away, and brushed my fingers against her cheek. Then we would have eternity to discover its possibilities. She leaned into my touch, her eyes closing briefly. And if I'm not ready for eternity just yet? Then we have tonight, I said simply. And tomorrow night, and as many nights as you desire, for as long as you desire them. The choice will always be yours, Rhea. Always. She opened her eyes, and in them I saw not submission, not awe, but something far more valuable, understanding, partnership, the beginning of something that could, with time and care, grow into love. Tonight, she said, taking my hand in hers. Let's start with tonight. As the first true rays of dawn filtered through the treated glass, casting long shadows across the floor of the penthouse, I felt something I had not experienced in centuries. Hope. Not the desperate hope of the powerless, but the quiet, steady hope of possibility. The king had returned to his throne, but he was no longer alone in the shadows. And as Rhea's fingers intertwined with mine, I knew that whatever challenges awaited in the nights to come, we would face them together. The king and the woman who had seen him when he was invisible, who had offered sustenance when he appeared to have nothing, who had reminded him of the humanity he had spent centuries trying not to lose. Outside, the city awakened to a new day, unaware that beneath its surface, an ancient order had been restored. But as I led Rhea deeper into the penthouse, away from the strengthening light, I found myself thinking not of kingdoms or laws or punishments, but of the simple, profound miracle of connection. And the endless night that stretched before us, full of possibilities as vast and deep as the darkness itself.